honestly, guys notice it more when you're out winning games, right? If Cleveland starts off in a bad start, they're not doing well, and all of a sudden Shador or Dylan Gabriel are doing well in 7-on-7. They're throwing dimes. In practice drills, the number one defense can't stop them. People take notice of that, and the more that the players see it, then the comments start happening over the lunch table. They start happening throughout the building, and that's when the pressure really will get severe.
This was the guy that they wanted to start. He's seasoned, he's experienced, he still has a big-time arm, even at his age, and they open with the Cincinnati Bengals. They wanted that experienced guy. He was always going to be the guy. They were not going to start Dylan Gabriel or Shador Sanders in week 1. Kenny Pickett had a hamstring injury. It makes it easy to go with Joe Flacco. And the question isn't and wasn't going to be who's the starter in Cleveland. The question is who's going to be the backup in Cleveland. Who's going to be the number 2 quarterback when they open the season against
the Cleveland Browns. Thought their biggest problem was just finding someone who could throw a clean spiral, until Jason Kelce came flying out of nowhere with a truth bomb that shook the entire franchise to its core. All of a sudden, the billionaire owner wasn't casually sipping coffee anymore. He was storming around the office, face red, looking like he was seconds away from typing, "How much does a new NFL team cost?" into Google. That's how much Kelce's words rattled him. So what did Jason actually say that left fans clutching their jerseys and execs sweating through their tailored suits? Well, this one is way messier than Cleveland's entire playbook. And that says a lot, because if the Browns have a reputation, it's 2 things: heartbreak and flat-out comedy. If the NFL ever gave out a Lombardi trophy for the most bizarre, self-inflicted losses, Cleveland would already have a dynasty on display. And just when fans were finally starting to think this team had clawed its way out of years of dysfunction, here comes Jason Kelce, a guy who just retired and should be chilling on a golf course or cracking beers on a boat, blasting them with, "Congrats, Cleveland, your whole house of cards is already burning down." That was the exact moment the Browns owner flipped from a laid-back billionaire to a man ready to fire reality itself. But honestly, should anybody be shocked? This is the same franchise that once convinced themselves Johnny Manziel was the second coming of Joe Montana. The same crew that stuck with Hugh Jackson like it was some top-secret master plan. And let's not forget, these are the same desperate decision makers who tossed away every shred of dignity just to gamble on Deshaun Watson season after season. The Browns don't just fail. They remix failure like it's an art show, and the gallery never closes. And yet the fans keep showing up, bless their battle-scarred souls. Every single season, they march back into the stadium loaded with fresh hope, only to leave with heartbreak, empty pockets, and therapy sessions on speed dial. But here's the jaw-dropping twist. Last season didn't feel like the same old circus for once. For a brief, shiny moment, it actually looked like Cleveland had cracked the code to being a real football team. The front office was high-fiving like they just discovered electricity. Stefanski was getting hyped as some football genius, and the dog pound was howling like it was 1999. Then reality didn't just tap them on the shoulder, it locked them in a chokehold, and the man delivering that brutal gut punch, none other than Jason Kelce, the Eagles legend who redefined offensive line dominance and occasionally stole the spotlight by showing up dressed like someone's mom at a holiday parade. Now in retirement, he's got no filter, no leash, and no reason to hold back. When Kelce looked at Cleveland, he didn't see a contender rising. He saw a franchise frantically duct-taping disasters together and trying to rebrand it as innovation. It got so wild, it was like Jason Kelce lit up a massive neon sign across the entire state of Ohio, screaming, "Cleveland, you're in trouble." And that's the difference here. This ain't some random internet troll or a salty radio caller firing off hot takes. This is Jason freaking Kelce, a Super Bowl champ, a respected vet, a guy who's lived inside a real winning, stable franchise and knows exactly what it looks like. So when Kelce straight up points out that the Browns are one quarterback injury away from a total meltdown, people don't just scroll past, they sit up and listen. And the louder his words echoed, the faster Jimmy Haslam, Cleveland's billionaire owner, started spiraling. Picture Haslam storming around his office like some unhinged soap opera villain, pacing in circles and muttering about loyalty under his breath, while his assistants ducked behind laptops, praying they wouldn't get pulled into the chaos. And let's not forget, this is the same owner who already sold Cleveland's entire future down the river with that jaw-dropping $230 million fully guaranteed contract for Deshaun Watson. And what did they get out of that gamble? A quarterback who missed games, delivered shaky showings, and looked rustier than a car abandoned in a Cleveland snowstorm. This was the guy they crowned as the savior, the man they wanted to build their franchise around. And Kelce, he didn't sugarcoat a single word. He flat out said what everyone else had been whispering for years. The Browns chained themselves to a quarterback who hasn't looked elite in forever. Even Joe Flacco's shocking little playoff magic couldn't distract from the ticking time bomb waiting to go off. And here's where it gets darkly funny. Browns ownership doesn't explode over their own bad decisions. Nope, they blow up.
Faith of a mustard seed. Right, because this is the greatest resurrection since Jesus the Christ. Right, like at some point, Joe Flacco was thinking about getting into TV.
Yeah.
Right, Joe Flacco didn't have a job, and then now you not only come back and start for the Cleveland Browns late in the 2023 season, but they came back around to you, and you're now the day one starter for a franchise that just 2 years ago was in the playoffs.
When someone else has the guts to point it out. It's like a magician throwing a full tantrum because the crowd finally spotted the rabbit hiding in the hat. Meanwhile, the fans weren't even mad. They were nodding their heads like, yeah, he's right. Because let's keep it real, Browns fans have a sixth sense for heartbreak. They can smell disaster before it even shows up on the injury report. And when you've got an aging defense, injuries lurking around the corner, and your entire future tied to one guy with a contract that's eating the salary cap alive, you're basically one ACL tear away from the whole operation crumbling to dust. The AFC North is a straight-up battlefield. The Ravens roll in with Lamar Jackson, a human joystick moving like he's running on video game cheat codes. The Bengals, Joe Burrow could stroll onto the field in a hospital gown with an IV drip still hanging and somehow sling 3 touchdowns before halftime. And the Steelers, chaotic, scrappy, unshakable. They don't collapse, they reload, grind harder, and sprinkle on that never-ending Mike Tomlin magic that refuses to die. Meanwhile, the Browns are like that kid at recess who finally learns how to tie his shoes, only to faceplant seconds later. And that's exactly where Jason Kelce went straight for the jugular. He didn't just toss a casual jab, he poked Cleveland right in its softest bruise with surgical precision. Kelce laid it bare. The Browns' so-called future doesn't look anything like a Super Bowl parade. It looks more like an unpaid parking ticket stacking up late fees month after month, piling higher until it crushes you. And Jimmy Haslam, he couldn't stand it. Not because Kelce was lying, but because every single word dripped with uncomfortable truth. And when truth comes out of Jason Kelce's mouth, it doesn't just echo through locker rooms, it roars across the entire league like thunder. Suddenly, every rival fan base is pointing at Cleveland and laughing, while the Browns are left scrambling to convince anyone they're not already sinking. Let's not forget, Jimmy Haslam has never exactly been Mr. Cool under pressure. This is the same owner who's treated the Browns like his own messy science experiment, shuffling through coaches and quarterbacks the way most people toss out cartons of expired milk. So when Jason Kelce casually called out the obvious, Haslam reportedly went full nuclear meltdown. You'd swear somebody insulted his grandmother instead of his billion-dollar football team. And honestly, it's hilarious. Here's the owner of a massive NFL franchise losing sleep over the blunt words of a retired lineman who doesn't even play in his division anymore. But let's be clear, this isn't just about Jason Kelce himself, it's about what Kelce represents. He's the mirror Cleveland refuses to look into, the voice that reminds them their magical little Cinderella run with Joe Flacco wasn't destiny, it was a fairy tale. And like every fairy tale, it ended the second midnight hit, with the pumpkin carriage waiting in the parking lot outside the stadium. The irony here is jaw-dropping. The Browns have had one of the most chaotic quarterback rooms in the entire league. Deshaun Watson was supposed to be the savior, the golden ticket, the hand-picked franchise hero. Instead, he's been banged up, inconsistent, and often looks like a guy who forgot where the end zone even is. Then out of nowhere comes Joe Flacco, a man the Browns only dialed up after Watson's season flatlined. And Flacco walked in looking like he found the fountain of youth hiding in his garage. He started launching bombs downfield like it was 2012, instantly making the entire organization look clueless. Just picture it. You drop $230 million guaranteed on your supposed franchise quarterback. And then a 39-year-old who wasn't even on your roster 3 weeks earlier shows up and completely outshines him in front of the whole world. That's not just embarrassing, that's historic humiliation. It ripped the mask off and exposed Cleveland's quarterback situation for what it really is, a ticking disaster. And then came Jason Kelce, ripping the curtain wide open and exposing the so-called Wizard of Haslam for what he really is, a billionaire desperately praying no one notices his franchise is one sprained ankle away from total collapse. No wonder Haslam was fuming. For years, he's been selling fans a shiny dream, stability, progress, the Browns finally breaking through as real contenders, and then Kelce, sipping his post-retirement smoothie like it's just another Tuesday, casually tells the world, Cleveland, still just a clown car with a fresh paint job. Brutal. And the sting? It wasn't just the words, it was the fans' reaction. Browns fans didn't rage at Kelce, they laughed. They roasted their own team with memes, flooded Twitter with sarcastic "we're doomed" posts, and some even thanked Kelce for saying out loud what they'd been screaming into their pillows for years. And nothing cuts an NFL owner deeper than realizing the same people dropping thousands on season tickets agree more with an outsider than with him. But just when Haslam thought it couldn't possibly get worse, here came the media storm. Sports talk shows devoured the drama like a Thanksgiving feast. Headlines lit up with Cleveland in crisis. Debates raged on air over whether Deshaun Watson might be the single biggest mistake in franchise history. Even rival fan bases piled on with pure joy, dunking on Cleveland like it was a national sport. Here's the kicker. The Browns could roll out a top 5 defense, snag a playoff berth, and even plant a Coach of the Year trophy in their lobby. And somehow, someway, they'd still get branded as a disaster in progress. And the funniest part? Most of this chaos is self-inflicted. Other franchises make mistakes and move on. The Browns, they don't just trip over the same crack in the sidewalk. The Browns don't just trip, they build a permanent monument to tripping and cut a ribbon at the grand opening. That Deshaun Watson contract, forget a gamble.
This is the unofficial depth chart that they released prior to the preseason game, where now Tyler Huntley would be, right behind Flacco. They need to take Flacco and just put him away, get him ready for the Cincinnati Bengals. Like, don't even worry.
Put him in the cryo chamber that Bobby Carpenter sleeps in every night.
Yeah, does not need to play at all. Barely practice because they're having to sign now another quarterback. And keep in mind, they already have Watson, who's hurt.
It was a full-on kamikaze dive, straight into financial doom. Every single dollar guaranteed, no escape hatch, no safety net. So when Jason Kelce calls it out and says Cleveland is now completely handcuffed by that decision, it lands like a punch to the gut. Because deep down, everyone in that front office knows he's right. They can't cut Watson, they can't trade him, and unless he somehow morphs back into his Houston prime, the Browns are chained to him like a ball and chain, dragging them down every single Sunday. And then, out of nowhere, Joe Flacco waltzes in like the ghost of Christmas past, reminding the entire city what competent quarterback play actually looks like. Fans were caught in the weirdest emotional roller coaster, screaming in joy over Flacco's bombs downfield while shaking their heads at the absurdity of it all. The man hadn't even unpacked his suitcase, and suddenly he was the one saving their season. Meanwhile, Watson sat on the bench collecting guaranteed millions with nothing to show for it. That's not a fairy tale. That's a straight-up sitcom playing out in real time. And here's the kicker. Jason Kelce didn't just hint at it. He flat out stood up, pointed right at the Browns, and said what everyone else was too polite or too scared to admit. This team might look shiny on the surface, but underneath, the foundation is cracked straight down to the core. And that's exactly why Jimmy Haslam lost his mind. Because the last thing he wants is the ugly truth screamed out loud for the whole world to hear. Every NFL team has flaws, sure, but here's the thing. Haslam doesn't lose sleep over flaws, he loses sleep over perception. Billionaires can't stand losing control of the story. They want fans to believe progress is real, the future is bright, and that dropping $120 on the latest Browns jersey is basically an investment in glory. But then Jason Kelce bulldozed that glossy illusion in a single breath, and suddenly the Browns didn't look like contenders anymore. They looked like the NFL's own reality show, where the drama never ends and the laughs come by accident. And honestly, that's the hilarious beauty of Cleveland. They cannot escape their own shadow. They can stack talent, ride a hot streak, maybe even sneak into the postseason. But one blunt comment from a retired lineman sends the whole front office spiraling. Because at this point, it isn't just football anymore. It's pride, ego, and the eternal comedy of a franchise tripping over its own shoelaces while insisting with a straight face, everything's fine. And if you really want to understand why Jason Kelce's words exploded like a bomb in Cleveland, just check the receipts. This has nothing to do with feelings. It's about math, ugly contracts, and injury reports that never seem to end. The brutal truth, the Browns are stuck in a division where good enough doesn't even get you noticed. Told you I remembered. And Deshaun Watson, man, he's either hurt, rusty, or out there moving like he accidentally wandered off from a YMCA flag football game. Every single time Browns fans dare to believe he'll magically morph back into that Houston version of himself, reality smacks them in the face, and Cleveland's hopes crash harder than ever. Because here's the cold truth, $230 million guaranteed doesn't buy miracles. It buys you front row seats to disappointment week after week. And then there's Joe Flacco, the ultimate punchline in this saga. The man was basically retired, probably spending more time comparing lawn fertilizer than studying coverages. Yet somehow he walks into Cleveland, dusts off his arm, and instantly outperforms Watson like it's child's play. That's not some fairy tale comeback for the Browns. That's an indictment. That's the football gods holding up a neon billboard screaming, "You paid how much for Watson?" Now let's talk money, because this is where the nightmare goes from bad to catastrophic. The Browns don't just have a quarterback crisis. They're strapped into a financial straitjacket. Nearly a quarter of their entire salary cap is locked up in one player who can't stay healthy and hasn't looked elite in years. It's worse than dealing with an overzealous TSA agent. Cleveland literally can't move without Watson's deal dragging them down. And that means the Browns are left scrambling, duct taping holes across the roster instead of building the kind of depth you need to survive the AFC North meat grinder. This is straight up NFL Hunger Games out here. The Ravens are stacked. Lamar Jackson running plays that look like cheat codes, Mark Andrews snatching everything in sight, and a defense built to snap quarterbacks in half. The Bengals, they've got Joe Burrow, a guy who could probably toss touchdowns blindfolded with one arm tied behind his back and still light up the scoreboard. And then you've got the Steelers. They still haven't cracked their quarterback puzzle, but somehow, someway, Mike Tomlin refuses to let them fold. Year after year, he grinds out 9 or 10 wins, like clockwork, just off pure grit and stubborn magic. So where does that leave Cleveland? Exactly where Jason Kelce said, in trouble. They're like the guy who shows up to a heavyweight fight wearing pool floaties, just praying nobody notices before the bell rings. Sure, their defense looked elite this past season, but let's be real. Dominant defenses don't stay dominant forever without serious support. Injuries stack up, veterans age, coordinators get poached for head coaching jobs, and suddenly that brick wall starts looking like it's got cracks all over it. And when that happens, the weight of the entire franchise shifts back onto the offense. An offense that right now is being held hostage by one contract so disastrous, it deserves its own chapter in an economics textbook. And let's not forget Cleveland's legendary injury curse. At this point, the Browns' medical staff must feel less like an NFL training crew and more like they're running a full-blown emergency room triage unit every single Sunday. Every week, it's the same old story in Cleveland. Another out for the season headline, and fans don't even blink anymore. They just sigh, roll their eyes, and start the countdown to next year. And that's the hilarious part. Jason Kelce didn't uncover some hidden scandal. He simply said out loud what Browns fans have been mumbling for years, usually right after the third injury report of the week drops. This team is always just one bad break away from a total implosion, and with Cleveland's cursed luck, that break might as well already be penciled into the calendar. The fans know it, the rivals know it, everybody knows it. Sure, on paper they've got stars on defense, some real playmakers on offense, and even a coaching staff that, at least for now, looks competent. But paper doesn't win games in the AFC North. Reality does. And reality demands 3 things: a reliable quarterback, cap flexibility, and durability. Cleveland, they've got none of the above. Jimmy Haslam can stomp around, throw tantrums, and pump out polished press releases all he wants, but none of it changes the math. The division won't get easier, the Watson contract won't vanish, and no amount of smoke and mirrors will hide the fact that the Browns are boxed in by their own mistakes. Even Joe Flacco's miracle cameo didn't fix the mess. It just made the cracks even more obvious for the world to see. So yes, Cleveland, Jason Kelce spelled it out plain and simple. You are in trouble, and judging by the receipts, he's not wrong. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and drop a comment below, and I'll see you on the next one.